Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So this morning we're going to be continuing our exploration of different qualities and characteristics of the Vaishnava. I don't have my presentation prepared for the slide today, so we won't be using that this morning. Just relying on my notes here. So we'll begin with a definition of Dharma. Dharma, by the way, is the topic today. Dharma, or right action. Let's call it right action. So there's a definition I'll read to you, and we'll work from that. The Gita's Dharma addresses the material and spiritual aspects of our lives, always striving for balance and harmony. While acting in this world, the Gita advises us to develop good character, proper behavior, personal integrity, and associated virtues. When we take the responsibility of Dharma, we discipline our desires and actions, aligning them with the welfare of the world and with others. develop an attitude of service, concern, straightforward dealings. Such an approach to life helps us to be more caring, conscious, and of benefit to the environment, to our relationships with family, community, nation, to ourselves, and to the Lord. So Dharma, when we think about character or virtue, generally as devotees of Krishna, we think in terms of this word Dharma. The Dharma is very broad in its application and its meaning. And it's unique among the qualities that we're going to be discussing, because you remember we talked about an external manifestation versus an internal state of being. Well, the state of being of Dharma internally, while that is very similar and will be the same for virtually all members of society, the same type of inner motivations, Dharma is displayed externally very differently among differently situated people. And sometimes they're opposite, to one another, and it can be quite confusing on what is Dharma. We know that Dharma is not an easy thing to understand, and even in the, as Prabhupada calls it in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, the vicious assembly, where Draupadi was brought and attempted to be disrobed. Even there, when the question of Dharma came up, what is Dharma, what's the proper or right action to do in this situation, even Bhishma, who's a Mahajan, he couldn't answer the question definitively. So Dharma is can be very confusing, and I don't propose that I'm going to resolve all those confusing aspects today, but we are going to try to broaden. We're going to look at different duties or dharma for different people with the aim of trying to broaden our own understanding of people and their individual capacities and inclinations, so that we can do our own dharma a little bit better. We can perform our own dharma a little bit better if we know what to expect when interacting with others. Then it helps us to ourselves do and take right actions. So to illustrate some of the differences that we find in duties in human society, and before we get into that, I might mention one thing, because I know that many devotees often refer to and are inspired by, rightly so, Prabhupada's instructions on establishing Varnashram Dharma in ISKCON, and why haven't we done this? And even the GBC members and leaders of our society struggle with how to implement Varnashram Dharma. But it's not easy. It's not easy because sometimes when we consider Dharma according to the Vedic perspective, it really tests our moral compass of what's right duty from the material, where we're coming from materially. Especially in America, where I'm from, and with my background, equal rights, equal treatment by the law, extremely important. Yet the example that I'm going to read to you shows almost just the opposite. And so it's really a test of my own sort of moral compass to make it spiritual and not just cling to those material roots of right and wrong. So it's not easy, although I think that there's an equal dedication to try to do what Prabhupada wanted in terms of Varnashram Dharma, but I think we struggle with some of these issues coming from our own moral compasses when we examine Dharma. So here's the example, and it involves Maharaj Yudhisthira and his understanding of Dharma and what it means when it's practically implemented in society. At one point, when Yudhisthira was a growing prince, along with the Kauravas, headed by Duryodhana, Vidura, the wise minister of the king, decided to test in his training of the princes so they would come to the level of being able to take positions of leadership in the kingdom. Vidura felt that they needed a test at one point in time, and so he called for both Duryodhana and Yudhisthira to come to the court. And before them was brought a murderer. There were 4 people brought before him that had committed a murder. And to test Yudhisthira and Duryodhana, Vidura asked them to proclaim or to give their judgment on what should happen to these men. So Duryodhana went first, and he said that since the punishment for murder was the death sentence in their kingdom, that each and every one of those men, all 4 of them, should be hanged. This is kind of like a job interview sometimes. when you're given these kind of tests at the interview to see how quickly you can think on your feet. So Vidura was kind of doing that with Duryodhana and Yudhisthira. And so that was Duryodhana's response. Quick, clear, without ambiguity. But then Vidura asked Yudhisthira to pronounce his judgment. And he said something very interesting. So I'll read here. First, I want to know the caste of each man. Upon saying so, he found that one was a Sudra, the other Vaishya, the third one was a Kshatriya, and the fourth one was a Brahmana. He then said that the Sudra is uneducated and does not know the difference between right and wrong. So he should be imprisoned for 4 years. The Vaishya has some knowledge of the difference between good and bad, thus he should get double what the Sudra gets. The Kshatriya is the protector of the nation and thus should not kill people and make them feel unsafe. So the Kshatriya should get double what the Vaishya got. The fourth man is a Brahmana. He is well versed in the difference between good and bad. His punishment should be the most severe, but you cannot kill a Brahmana. Therefore, the head priest of the kingdom should decide the punishment of the Brahmana. Every person is different. You cannot measure every person's doing in the same scale. that would definitely be unjust. So he made some distinctions based on the social situation of each individual. And as I mentioned, this is the kind of tension that's there with at least supposed justice in America. Equal treatment under the law is blind. But the depth of the Vedic knowledge and the science of Dharma helps us to understand that, well, wait a minute, maybe there are other considerations that need to be made rather than simply a blanket or blind treating everyone equal. So, based on our knowledge, based on our duties in society or to society, we may be seen or judged differently. Does that strike you as fair? I mean, am I the only one that has this very egalitarian view of everyone's the same? Or, yeah.
I was just thinking how, isn't it with karma as well, that it depends if you know or don't know what's right and wrong. Like if you have ignorance, if you're in ignorance and you do something, the reaction is less than if you already know that that's wrong and you do it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Karma doesn't act blindly either. Although in some sense I think it does. But again, there's so many subtleties and everything like that. Yeah, I think it's some truth that karma doesn't act blindly, but others, like Prabhupada gives the example of touching the fire. The small child, he's ignorant, but he touches the fire and burns just like somebody with knowledge. So both things there, but I take your point. Something over here, yeah.
Just what you said before, we take consideration for age, so that the younger the child, they're not as severely punished as an adult.
Right, yeah. Right. Well, that's done even in the justice system we find in, say, in America now, which I'm familiar with. But it's almost like today's society makes available to younger children like powerful things like weapons that they might not have had before, and they can commit horrible crimes with those weapons. So do they really deserve to be, are they really innocent, or who's to blame? There's all kinds of levels there. Marge.
Well, also, doesn't the conservative-liberal divide have something to do with the perceptions today? For example, at least in the USA, there's that battle. Someone commits a crime. The conservatives will say, just hit the person hard with the weight of the law, leave no doubt, whereas the liberals will say, well, let's try to understand the background. Especially here in New Zealand, it'll be like that. What's the maximum prison sentence in New Zealand? You can murder someone and you'll get 10 years in jail because they feel that prison will not actually rectify you, it'll make the problem worse. So I guess in a liberal Western jurisprudence, there's that understanding or that conception that, well, let's look at your background. Did you have parents who abused you, therefore you became violent? They'll do that in New Zealand. What motivated you? What are the roots in your life that may have contributed, mitigating factors?
Yeah. And those things in the Vedic tradition here we find it's, and maybe this is a simplistic example also, or story also, but just being a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra makes a difference. But I think Yudhishthira tries to explain here, well, you should have known. The Brahmana should have known better. The Vaishya should have known better. The Sudra couldn't necessarily be held responsible because they didn't know better. But the point is that there are differences. There are differences, and at least the Vedic system tries to recognize that in various ways. There's another story that illustrates this, how our actions differently situate us in life and propel us to different destinations. And it's a story Srila Prabhupada tells about a sage who was once passing by, and on his way he met a prince. And sages, what they do is they bless people. And so the sage blessed the prince, "May you live forever." Now he also met a saintly person, and he blessed that saintly person that either you live or you die. And then he met a brahmachari, and he told the brahmachari, "May you die immediately." Then he met a butcher, or one of those persons that we saw in the video the other night, committing atrocities. And he blessed him that you neither live nor die. So he gave these 4 benedictions based on the activities and position of these 4 individuals in society. So the son of the king. Why was the son of the king blessed that may you live forever? Who knows why that blessing was given? Yes.
Because he had done pious activities and therefore he got the position of a prince. But as a prince, he was using up those pious activities and committing sinful activities. So in his next life, he'd have a poor birth. So you live forever so that you can enjoy. Otherwise, you're going to have a horrible next life.
All right, your next life is not going to be in the same kind of enjoying situation. So better you live forever and not have to face that reality. The saintly person, either you live or you die. Doesn't make a difference. Why was that blessing given? Anybody know? Yes?
Because he's going to be the same in this world. He's going to do the same activity.
Right, you're serving the Supreme Lord while you're living. You'll continue to serve the Supreme Lord in your next life. What you do in this life will lead to the next life. It'll be the same. So either you live or die, it's the same thing. Same activity. The brahmachari, may you die immediately. Why was that given to the brahmachari? Yes?
Because he's living a life of such austerity, voluntary pain, and in his next life is so much
Yeah.
reactions away again.
The old brahmacharis die immediately. Don't panic, ladies.
Well, we got something both for grihastas and brahmacharis coming up here, so. Yeah, you're living a life of austerities now, and then the next life, by the strength of those, you're going to go back to Godhead. So give up your austerities now and may die immediately and gain Krishna's association. And finally, our butcher, his life is ghastly now, and by the sinful activities he's performing, his future is equally grim. So best for him neither to live nor to die. So again, the point is that there are differences and different duties that are to be performed by different persons in society. And what is right action for one is not necessarily right action for another. And so we need to know to make these distinctions. If we are going to be persons of Vaishnava character, and interact in an exemplary way, as we described here in the definition, with an attitude of service, concern, and straightforward dealings, if we're going to be responsible and disciplining our desires and our senses and aligning them with the welfare of the world, we have to know what the world actually consists of and not have simplistic or prejudicial views of the world. Broad-mindedness. Yesterday Maharaj was talking in his initiation lecture about the need for brahmanas in society. Does that mean that there's all going to be a lot of pujas and things like that? We've got to have the brahmanas to go and do the pujas? That's why there's a need for so many brahmanas in society? No, that there's a need for broad-minded persons who understand the truth of the world that we live in, who can appreciate and understand the differences and know how to properly deal with and execute a good life. Right behavior in such a society. Does that make sense to everybody? That's what we're trying to do here with the character of Vaishnava, to broaden, particularly this aspect of Dharma, to broaden your perspectives on life and your approach to life. So, we have a couple of examples of brahmachari life and grihastha life. That's most of us in the room today. So we'll try to focus a little bit on understanding particular dharma for those two ashrams. And to do that, Madhumati is going to read from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Narada Muni and Yudhisthira Maharaj are discussing perfect human society. So I'm going to read about the brahmachari.
Yeah. Narada Muni said, a student should practice completely controlling his senses. He should be submissive and should have an attitude of firm friendship for the spiritual master. With a great vow, the brahmachari should live at the Gurukul only for the benefit of the Guru. At both junctions of day and night, namely in the early morning and in the evening, he should be fully absorbed in thoughts of the spiritual master. Being called by the spiritual master, the student should study the Vedic mantras regularly. Every day before beginning his studies and at the end of his studies, the disciple should respectfully offer obeisances unto the spiritual master. The brahmachari should go out morning and evening to collect alms, and he should offer all that he collected to the spiritual master. He should eat only if ordered to take food by the spiritual master. Otherwise he might fall into the deep dark well, like the Brahmani. Otherwise, if the spiritual master does not give this order, he may sometimes have to fast. A brahmachari should be quite well behaved and gentle and should not eat or collect more than necessary. He must always be active and expert, fully believing in the instructions of the spiritual master and the Shastra.
Out of the many qualities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam that we just heard, two stand out to me, and also based on my own experience, as important. So I'd like to mention those two, but if others, particularly among the brahmacharis, have stood out to them, sort of struck a beat in their heart, then maybe they can share their thoughts on those with us as well. But to me, two things stood out, two qualities: determination and regulation. To practice spiritual life, brahmacharya ashram is actually, and the duties of brahmacharya ashram are ideal because they encompass these two qualities. Other qualities as well, but I'm focusing on these two: determination and regulation. Spiritual life and separating ourselves from our material conditioning is a difficult task, and if we're not determined, then it simply becomes more and more difficult. But with determination, so much in the service of the Lord can be accomplished. When I think about Vedic personalities, I was trying to think, who is the ideal brahmachari? And I came up with somebody, but I'd like to ask you in your own minds, who is the ideal brahmachari out of all the Vedic literatures? Hanuman, he said, yes. Hanuman. And we look at that, that's what I was thinking of too. Does anybody else have a favorite brahmachari out there? Narada Muni? Okay, well, Narada Muni is quite accomplished as well. But is he known as a brahmachari? Is Narada Muni known as a brahmachari, particularly?
Paramahamsa.
Paramahamsa, yeah.
World.
Yeah, I think sort of maybe traditionally Hanuman may be better. Is anybody other brahmacharis here? Krishna? Krishna is a brahmachari? That's really esoteric. There is a story of Krishna as a brahmachari, so gopis didn't believe it either. So we'll save that for another day. Bhishma. Oh, Bhishma, that's a good example. Bhishma as a brahmachari, particularly because he took such a firm vow. That's his name, Bhishma, terrible. He's described as a terrible vow. But Bhishma, he didn't really like to live in a brahmachari ashram. He was living in a palace and things like that. So, but yeah, Bhishma. Anybody else?
4 Kumaras.
4 Kumaras. Yeah, they were so determined that their father Brahma gave the order and they refused. Yeah, 4 Kumaras. Yes. Priyavata Maharaj. Yeah, he was a brahmachari, but then he was asked to take Grihastha ashram and he took. And that's an interesting point because his brahmachari training probably helped him a lot when he took over managing the kingdom, right? And it became manifest. How did it become manifest, that brahmachari training, later in his life?
He could leave his kingdom.
Hmm?
He could leave his kingdom.
Yes, at some point he thought, he didn't become attached because he had the brahmachari training. And he was able to work without attachment. And so when it came time for him to leave, then he could exhibit that renunciation and give up the kingdom. Value of brahmacharya training, yeah. Anybody else?
The Shringa Brahmachari.
The Shringa Brahmacharya, he was so powerful he could see the path. Lord Chaitanya followed his path that he created just by his meditation. Yes, very, very powerful brahmacharya in Chaitanya Lila. We have another brahmachari in Chaitanya Lila we're going to do a little reading about. Anybody else?
Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Just to give an example of how Dharma is the same, but it may be manifest differently according to the ashrams. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Lifelong brahmachari, Naistika brahmachari. But he said, what did he say? He said, I'd be prepared to have hundreds of children if I could make them Krishna conscious. So it wasn't just, this is the only way, brahmacharya. Giving others Krishna consciousness, making Krishna consciousness, even if it meant different activities in a different ashram. So yeah, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Yeah, all good. I have to sort of humorously note here, all the suggestions came from the men about the brahmachari. Oh, now you have some.
How about Gardava Muni? Was he a brahmachari?
Cardamom Muni?
Oh, they like that one.
He was, yes.
Lord Chaitanya's servant, Govinda?
Govinda. Yes, Govinda was a brahmachari, and he came and he got on the order of his guru, he came and he got the opportunity to serve a person. He served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu while he was staying at Jagannath Puri. Yeah, so these two things, determination and regulation, are particularly pronounced in the life of a brahmachari. And I find in my counseling and working with devotees in the Grihastha ashram, time after time, this point about regulation comes up. So many duties are there among the Grihasthas. You have to do this, you have to do that, so many things you have to do. The key to doing them is regulation. And where is that regulation learned? In my own life, I was a brahmachari for 9 years, and the regulations that I live my life by now, a regulated life that enabled me to accomplish what I need to accomplish in my ashram duties and my service duties, go back to brahmachari training of particularly regulation. So it's so important that living in the ashram, leading a regulated life, it helps you accomplish everything you need to do in life. And so that's a real value of brahmachari training. Therefore, in the Vedic model, even those that would leave the ashram of the guru, I say at 25 years old, one would leave the ashram of the guru. But having had that training, it was the best training for Grihastha, entering the Grihastha ashram, Grihastha life. Because it provided a basis for a continued execution of religious duties, as well as spiritual duties, as well as our material duties. So, brahmachari life, with its austerities, provides us the opportunity for determination, and that's why I thought about Hanuman, because he was able to accomplish so much in the service of Lord Ram that others couldn't, based on the determinations he had to please the Lord. So, austerity is part of the life of a brahmachari, but that austerity is real wealth. It's the currency by which a brahmachari advances in spiritual life. Now, it's not just by austerities of brahmachari life that we get the supreme goal of life. And to illustrate this, we want to hear a reading about a brahmachari in Chaitanya Lila and how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt with that brahmachari.
Once, a brahmachari, a celibate student who was very peaceful, honest, and faultless, practicing penances and living only on milk and fruits, not eating anything else, wanted to see the kirtans of the Lord. But the Lord personally shut the doors so that non-devotees may not enter. So this brahmachari would visit Srivas Pandit every day and repeatedly request him to allow him inside the kirtan. He would say, "If you kindly take me inside your house during the kirtan, then I can feast my eyes to the Pandits chanting and dancing. I'll be ever grateful to you for this." Finally, one day, Srivas Pandit replied, I know you to be a good person who spent a sinless life eating only fruits and milk, maintaining strict celibacy. I think you're eligible to see the Lord's kirtan and dancing. But you have to remain hidden inside the house, since the Lord's order are that no one is allowed inside. He brought the brahmachari inside, who then carefully concealed himself. The kirtan started, and the Lord of the 14 worlds, Vishnubar, began to dance. Lord Nityananda and Gadadhar Pandit danced around the Lord, while Advaita went dancing hither and thither, floating on the waves of joy. Everyone was drowned in an ocean of ecstasy. Reminds something like what happens here.
Yes.
Oblivious to the external world of Lord of Vaikuntha, was lost to himself, dancing to his devotees singing. The only sound that was heard were the Lord's names, and the Lord exhibited all the ecstatic symptoms in unlimited ways. The omniscient Supreme Lord Vishnubar was fully aware of the brahmachari's presence. After a short while, the Lord commented, "Today, I do not feel the usual ecstasy while dancing. Can anyone of you explain this? Maybe someone is hiding inside this house. Please tell me the truth." Srivas Pandit became very afraid, and he said, "My Lord, I assure you, there is no atheist or non-believer in this house. Only a brahmachari, a fully qualified Brahman, who is sinless and drinks only milk and eats only fruits. He had a strong desire to see you dancing. You are very right, my Lord. He is here in hiding." This information enraged the Lord, and he said, "Right now, this very moment, take him out of this house. What spiritual sadhana does he possess to enable him to see my dancing? How can he develop devotion to me by drinking milk?" The Lord dramatically raised his arms, pointing his fingers to make a point. He continued, "Just by drinking milk, no one can attain me. Even a low-caste dog-eater can claim me if he takes full shelter of me. Then I also accept him. A person may be renunciate, a sannyasi, without worldly attachment, but if he does not surrender to me, then I do not favor him. Tell me, how did Gajendra the elephant, or Hanuman the monkey, or the gopis, the simple milkmaids of Braja, attain me? What great austerities did they perform? Even the demons perform severe penances and austerities. But they are slain because they do not surrender to me. I will not have any milk drinker here polluting everything. I will destroy everything." The brahmachari was by now trembling with fear. He came out of his concealment thinking, "It has been my great fortune to be able to see what I have seen, and I have also received the punishment for my misdeed. But what a wonderful dancing and singing I saw!" A devotee thinks and feels this way, he being the Lord's servitor. He is always willing to accept all chastisement from the Lord. The brahmachari started to walk out of the house. With these thoughts in his mind, which of course were already known to the Lord, the most merciful Lord then had the brahmachari brought back to the house. He placed his lotus feet on his head and blessed him. The Blessed Lord said, "Do not try to gain strength by performing austerities and penances. Render loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord Vishnu, Krishna, for it is the highest of all other activities. The brahmachari began to weep in joy, thinking constantly about the Lord's causeless mercy upon him. The devotees became jubilant and offered their obeisances to the Lord. So the Lord then continued to dance ecstatically. One who hears this wonderful narration will certainly unite with Lord Chaitanya in devotional service. I offer my prostrated obeisances at the feet of the brahmachari who displayed such wonderful devotional understanding in accepting the Lord's chastisement.
Brahmachari ashram ki. The brahmachari, another quality that was brought out in this pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of a brahmachari is the humility with which he leads his life. Austerities can make the heart very hard. That's not going to gain us entrance into the kirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What will gain us entrance there is being a humble devotee, ready to accept instruction and to work hard in the service of the Lord. So those are some dharmas, duties, or right actions which are appropriate for a brahmachari. Grihastas, do you want to read about Grihasta life from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam?
Narad Muni replied, this was after King Yudhishthira asked him about householders. So he said, my dear king, those who stay at home as householders must act to earn their livelihood. And instead of trying to enjoy the results of their work themselves, they should offer these results to Krishna, Vasudeva. How to satisfy Vasudeva in this life can be perfectly understood through the association of great devotees of the Lord. A grihastha must associate again and again with saintly persons, and with great respect he must hear the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Lord and his incarnations, as these activities are described in the Bhagavatam and other Puranas. Thus one should gradually become detached from material life. While working to earn his livelihood as much as necessary to maintain body and soul together, one who is actually learned should live in human society unattached to family affairs, although externally appearing very much attached. An intelligent man in human society should make his own program of activities very simple. If there are suggestions from his materialistic friends, children, parents, brothers, or anyone else, he should externally agree, saying, yes. You nod your head a little bit and say, yes. Yes. That is all right. But internally, he should be determined not to create a cumbersome life in which the purpose of life will not be fulfilled.
So out of these duties or dharma for those in the Grihastha ashram, two again stand out to me that I'll mention, but maybe you can mention others as well. But the two I have are sacrificing one's wealth and associating with saintly persons. These things are essential for Grihasthas because Grihastha life means more involvement with the material energy. Brahmachari life, sannyasi life, there's no interaction, or if the interaction is, it's, as we described last evening, how to give Krishna consciousness to others. That's her life. Dev Maharaj has told me that for his brahmacharis, 2 things: reading the books and distributing the books. Their lives center around these things. Grihastas' lives center around other things, and therefore there is danger there. So some insulation needs to be there. And these 2 things, sacrificing wealth and associating with saintly persons, provide that insulation from being influenced by material energy. We have to be very careful in the Grihastha ashram because material energy is very strong. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mama Maya Duratyaya. Very strong. There has to be good respect for material nature. Otherwise, we can find ourselves. I remember years ago, there was a devotee that I knew, and he was the president of one of the ISKCON temples. He was living in Houston, Texas. Later, he was living in Los Angeles and living down the street from the temple community. Shastra Krip knows there's all kinds of apartments there. So he was living down Watsika Avenue toward the freeway, one of the apartments down there. And he would occasionally come to the temple. Years later, I met that devotee again. He had moved a little further away from the temple in Los Angeles. And in his consciousness, I could see that essentially he was gone. There was like nothing there in terms of feeling, sentiment, knowledge, attachment for Krishna. He just become completely covered over by the material energy. He was a nice person, nice enough person. It wasn't like he was some bitter person marching up and down in front of the temple, you brainwashed me or something. He was a very nice, competent person. He was a temple president at one point in time. But it was almost as if that was a phase I went through in my life. And now I'm on to something else. Very sad to see. But it comes from a lack of these 2 things. A willingness to sacrifice one's wealth. And our wealth may be broader than that. It's not just money, but our time, our wealth, our time, whatever energies we have, whatever intelligence we have, to sacrifice those things. As well as getting the strength to do that by associating with saintly persons. These things are absolutely necessary for the Grihastha. So, does anybody have any other things that she was reading about the duties that sort of struck their heart a bit as about it being important for Grihastha ashram? Yes?
One of the qualities where it said when your brothers and relatives suggest something, just say yes and move on.
Not being influenced by our material relations to give up Krishna consciousness. Come on, what are you leading such an austere life for? Enjoy, get a big car, a big house. Avoiding that influence. Because naturally our relatives have some influence over us, and as in the Grihastha ashram, we're in contact with them in one way or another. And so, why not? Let's enjoy. Come on, let's go have a whatever, drink or whatever. So that's one thing, yes.
But the one thing I find in the Grihastha ashram, quite an important thing, is that of sustainability. And I guess it differs a little bit from the renunciate mode where you have to sort of, especially if you're family expansion phase, you're trying to create a facility which is sustainable for decades. And often the pace of life which one approaches bhakti can be a little bit different from more of a renunciant kind of driven pace of life. And I can kind of understand that because I guess an advanced devotee who is fully surrendered to the mission is advanced, they can live or die, but nobody to get it must be spread. So that, that's a wonderful offering to the movement. But see, there's sort of different ways of approaching the theme of sustainability.
Well, it'll be balance. I mean, it'll be balance. Balance is what we need to seek, and it'll be individual. But I think the overriding message I get from what she read is simplicity. Keep our lives simple. We have to keep running that through our head, because the tendency will be to make it more complicated. So keep it simple. Not that you don't meet your needs, not that you execute, austerities to the point where it becomes a struggle, distasteful, one loses a taste for Krishna Bhakti. Not that, but we do have to maintain this simplicity, and that comes from associating with saintly persons. Saintly persons will help us. What does the sadhu mean in this regard? It means to cut. So the sadhus, they visit us, we associate with them, and they give us instructions which help us from letting the grass get overgrown, and striving for material things in so many ways. I can't remember how many of my sannyasi godbrothers I've heard say, the same point of keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't aspire for material things which are beyond what we really need in life. And that kind of life, Prabhupada himself called the Grihastha Brahmachari life. Because it's the same simplicity and determination is underlying the ashram. Yes?
I was just thinking in terms of my experience is that they feed into each other, this idea of hearing from sadhus. Of course, Srila Prabhupada is our main instructions come from him, and I've noticed the more we reduce our hearing and chanting, the more we expand, kind of goes into each other. So, and having actually having a regulated program of hearing and chanting at home. I know it's quite difficult because you have to balance the working week. But I've noticed that the less I read, the less I invite devotees or have classes with devotees and things like that, the more you start thinking. I don't know, is there anything you can add?
Well, I think that's everyone's experience. It's a good, very good, it's like on a scale, the less you do that, the more these other things rise up. And the point that I'm getting when I'm hearing you speak is that, and it's a very important point to make, is that austerity is also there in the Grihastha ashram. And it's our austerity to balance those things, isn't it? I mean, the brahmacharis may do austerities, but it's not like you become a Grihastha and you don't have to do any austerities anymore. But your austerities is different, and it's balancing. How you're going to balance that? How you're going to keep the simplicity? How you're going to meet the needs? We shouldn't frown upon these things or become frustrated with it, because there are opportunities for self-purification. The Grihastha ashram is an ashram. It's also meant for purification. And it comes in the form of how to balance these things. And the role of saintly persons is extremely important. Hearing and chanting. Maharaj.
You reminded me of two things. In terms of the men, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita says that for men who want to consider marriage, 3 things are necessary. Number 1, good health. Number 2, ability to generate financial maintenance. And number 3, a suitable mentality for living with a woman. So, I'm saying no value judgments, please. So, I've often seen that, especially these days, so many of the men, they're often lucky if they get 1 out of 3. and then their problems. They're not the type to get any money, their health is bad, or they really don't understand that they're going to have to deal with a spirit soul in a different kind of body, in a different kind of mind.
Mm.
The other thing I wanted to say was maybe many of the devotees here are not aware of your lifestyle and Madhumati Devidasi's lifestyle. So maybe just briefly explain. They do have a home. There's what, 3 bedrooms? Yes. And they do have a car. And Shesha Prabhu supports the household with Madhumati Devidasi's assistance in terms of a legal practice. And they do have children. They have 2 daughters, one who's married. So amidst all that, Shesha Prabhu has always been so active in Lord Chaitanya's mission. And his wife also. Active to the point of major international and national responsibilities. So, certainly, in my opinion, he is most qualified to speak about balance. The house is there, the children are there, the wife is there, but immense devotional service is there. So when you hear him speak, please keep that in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. I'd like to add one thing to the list, and heartfelt and sincerely meant that because I have friends like His Holiness Devamrita Swami that do come from time to time. They may not stay at the house. But they visit us there. He and many of our godbrothers, as a brahmachari, got to know them and have maintained friendship with them over the years. They
used to stay in my office in LA.
Right, yeah. I took shelter with Devamrita Swami when I went to LA to work for the BPT. He had his office there, and rather than being in the brahmachari ashram where 100 people slept on the floor all in the same room, he gave me a little space in the corner of his office, and I stayed there with him. And one of our other godbrothers, Sureshwar, I think it was here last year, year before, used to live together in LA. But that, I think, is, for me personally, one of the most encouraging things is associating with my godbrothers. So many of them now who have taken sannyas. Before they were brahmacharis, but now they're taking sannyas. And yet they still maintain some friendship for me, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
But one other point, since you mentioned so many of your godbrothers, have taken sannyas, Srila Prabhupada does write in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that if the wife at home is no impediment to devotional service, there's no need to take sannyas.
I just want to tell you, thank you, Maharaj.
I'm equal to everyone. Or else the ladies here soften me up.
Well, we do have one more little reading that shows some of the dangers of grihastha life, the dangers and benefits, just like our brahmachari, milk-drinking brahmachari. He kind of walked a thin line before he got the mercy of the Lord. There's the activities of Shivananda Singh, perfect grihastha, who also walked a line before getting the complete mercy of the Lord. So Madhumati is going to read that for us.
So this pastime is about every year the devotees from Bengal would go to Jagannath Puri to see Lord Chaitanya. And Shivananda's, we're going to be here about Shivananda's service. Because Nityananda Prabhu was preaching in Bengal, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had ordered him not to come to Puri. That year, however, he went with the rest of the party to see the Lord. When there is Nityananda, there is trouble. We'll see. Srivas Thakur was also there with his 3 brothers and his wife, Malini. Acharya Ratna was similarly accompanied by his wife. Vasudev Dutt, Murari Gupta, Vidyanidhi, and many other devotees went to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Altogether, they numbered 200 or 300. The devotees first saw Sachi Mata, took her permission, and in great happiness they started for Puri, congregationally chanting the holy name of the Lord. Shivananda Singh managed the payment of tolls at different places, maintaining everyone, all the 200 to 300 devotees. He guided all the devotees in great happiness. Shivananda Singh took care of everyone and gave each devotee places to stay. He knew all the paths leading to Orissa. One day, when the party was being checked by a toll collector, the devotees were allowed to pass and Shivananda Singh remained behind alone to pay the taxes. The party went into a village and waited beneath a tree because no one but Shivananda Singh could arrange for their residential quarters. Nityananda Prabhu, meanwhile, he became very hungry and upset. He had not yet obtained a suitable residence. He began calling Shivananda Singh ill names. Shivananda Singh has not arranged for my residence, and I am so hungry. I could die. Because he has not come, I curse his 3 sons to die. Hearing this curse, Shivananda Singh's wife began to cry. Just then Shivananda returned from the toll station. Crying, his wife informed him, Lord Nityananda has cursed our sons to die because his quarters have not been provided. Shivananda Singh replied, You crazy woman! Okay, Grihastha men, please don't get any ideas. Why are you needlessly crying? Let my 3 sons die for all the inconvenience we have caused Nityananda Prabhu. After saying this, Shivananda Singh went to Nityananda Prabhu, who then stood up and kicked him. Very pleased at being kicked, Shivananda Singh quickly arranged for a milkman's house to be the Lord's residence. Shivananda Singh touched the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda and led him to his residence. After giving the Lord his quarters, Shivananda Singh, being very pleased, spoke as follows. Today you have accepted me as your servant and have properly punished me for my offense. My dear Lord, your chastising me is your causeless mercy. Who within the 3 worlds can understand your real character? The dust of your lotus feet is not attainable even by Lord Brahma. Yet your lotus feet have touched my wretched body. Today, my birth, my family, my activities have all become successful. Today, I have achieved the fulfillment of all religious principles, economic development, satisfaction of the senses, and ultimately devotional service to Krishna. When Lord Nityananda heard this, he was very happy. He rose and embraced Shivananda Singh in great love.
Grihastha Ashram ki. So final point here, concerning Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how he dealt with his devotees. Even the most intimate devotees, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, he gave them instructions to engage in Krishna consciousness or come to the stage of full engagement in Krishna consciousness in different ways, which I think are instructive for us to know. For instance, in Lord Chaitanya's dealings with the Kurma Brahmana he met during his South Indian tour, and that Brahmana, once having received the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wanted to leave home and travel with Lord Chaitanya. So what did Lord Chaitanya tell the Kurma Brahmana about his desire in this regard? Does anybody know?
Stay where you are, wherever you go.
Yes. Don't think like this again, he told him. Stay wherever you are, and whoever you meet, you give them Krishna consciousness. So that was his instruction to the Kurma Brahmana, to stay at home.
And that way you'll always be with me.
Oh, and that way he'll always be with me, yes. How did the Lord instruct Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis so that they could always be with him? Anybody say? He told them to leave home and go to Vrindavan, which is exactly different instruction. You leave home and go to Vrindavan, and you execute Krishna consciousness there, you execute my order there. What about Gopal Bhatta and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave them instructions which really seem, well, let's just say they're interesting when we consider he's talking to renunciates. Does anybody know what he told them? Yes.
Was it that they should look after their parents?
Yes, they should look after their parents. Now, we had a little disagreement last night, my wife and I, whether both Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami were told to take care of their parents. I'm completely 100% sure that Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was given that instruction, specifically about take care of his parents before he came, and when they depart the world, then you can go to Vrindavan. Was Gopal Bhatta given that same instruction about taking care of his parents? Does anybody know specifically that point? I do believe it's fact. Of course, his parents were Venkata Bhatta and Lord Chaitanya had so much exchange with. It wasn't like they were ordinary parents. And his uncle was Prabhupada Saraswati. So, but I do believe that instruction is given. Well, take care of your parents, and then when they depart the world, then go to Vrindavan. Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta. Now, Raghunath Das Goswami was given unique instruction as well, how he should come to Krishna. It's almost as if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood that Raghunath Das Goswami could not be bound down by beautiful wife and opulent home. But he told him that just be patient. The time will come when Krishna will show you, now you can leave this situation and come and join me in Puri. Be patient, don't act like a madman, he said. And so Raghunath Das Goswami was patient. One night, the pujari from the temple wouldn't do his service, so they came to get Raghunath Das to encourage him to do his service. The guards weren't around, and as Maharaj said about himself, he was gone. He was gone. And they went crazy trying to get him back, sending all kinds of guards and chasing him, but he got free. But Lord Chaitanya told him you had to be patient. So there's an individual path, an individual dharma, duties, the right actions for each and every one of us depending on our situation. If we hear from the Shastra and we take association from the devotees, that is common to any ashram, any duties for Vaishnavas. If we do that, then we're bound to come to the goal. in our spiritual lives. So, I think there's time for questions. Yeah.
Thanks for the nice. Just going back to the justice right, judicial
Hmm.
and
Justice by Yudhisthira and Dhritarashtra, yes.
sorry, Duryodhana.
Duryodhana.
Being fair to the guy who died, to the man who died, it seems to me that Duryodhana's justice is better than Yudhishthira because the man was dead,
Hmm.
regardless of what the distinction was. It appears to me that the man is dead.
The man died. How do we give justice to the person that was murdered and his family or something? Well, justice, the essential quality of justice is not that I feel justice or you feel justice, but we all feel some resolution of the situation. For instance, one of the reasons why a death penalty is there in the Vedic system is to show mercy to the murderer so he doesn't have to come back and suffer in the next life. And so justice meted out according to the Vedic system is something that includes the victim, their benefit, their family's benefit. And so we have to see it in a more holistic way, that it wasn't just forget about the person that was murdered, we'll treat these people like this, by giving each individual instruction and punishment according to their position. That instruction or punishment includes the justice, the recompense to the victim's soul and the family. That's the only way I can understand it. It's not separated as we might think when we think about it materially. Well, what about the victim's rights? What about the victim's family's rights? How are they being taken? How are they being accounted for? It's accounted for in the punishment that's given to the individuals. That would be my understanding of it. I think there's a gentleman back here.
Yeah, so from this Shivananda Sena as an example, where the children have been cursed to death and the wife is concerned about that and expecting validation and support from the husband, but he's saying, no, that's good, it's all in my good. So if there is actually a difference of opinion and the family members, the wife and the children are not aligned with the same kind of devotional systems, then this sacrificing of wealth can lead to conflicts, number one. And then second, having this kind of interpretations of events can also lead to a feeling that this person actually doesn't love us, is actually disconnected. So this sort of emotional impact as well as the financial conflicts, etc. So how to actually resolve that situation where the entire family is not engaged in?
I think the first thing we have to understand is that these descriptions are of the Lord and His eternal associates together, and so a lot of the material considerations you mentioned aren't the reality of what's going on. What's going on there is the dedication to the Lord, the sort of the emotional attachment to pleasing the Lord Nityananda that's described. No one's thinking that Nityananda Prabhu is cursing the children and that they're going to die or something like that. They're more expressions of love. Those extreme things that are expressed are based on an exchange of love between the Lord and His devotees. Not that Nityananda Prabhu is sort of vindictively cursing as a Brahmin. I'm going to curse these sons and have them die like that. That's not the mood of what's going on here. It's an exchange of love between the Lord and his intimate disciples. Now, there's a similar story that happened that involved the death of a son and a similar kind of reaction that shows how ultimately the spiritual benefit of everyone involved is concerned. At the kirtans we read about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the house of Srivas Thakur, one night his son died during the kirtan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also felt, oh, I'm not feeling the ordinary ecstasy that I have. But Srivas Thakur, he wanted to keep it quiet. No, don't tell. And he was telling his wife, keep the women quiet, don't make them cry. I don't want to disturb the kirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is similar to, Shivananda saying, oh, don't complain about that. But still, Lord Chaitanya could understand something wrong, so he inquired what happened. And then he was told that Srivas Thakur's son had died. And so then he went, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to see the son. And he caused the son to come back to life and explain why he had left the house of Srivas Thakur. And the son explained the science of the soul as apart from the body. And that you say you're my father and mother, but in previous life, were you my father and mother? How many fathers and mothers have I had? And he explained the transcendental nature of the soul and the reality of our relationships in this world, how temporary they are. And so everyone got spiritually enlightened by that situation. And so the same thing with Nityananda Prabhu saying like that, Shivananda saying, responding like he did to his wife, when the Lord is satisfied, all inauspiciousness disappears. So the things that you're speaking about, they didn't enter into the situation. Again, these are special persons and special relationships with the personality of Godhead. And we shouldn't think in material terms about them, because ultimately, just as in the story of Srivas Thakur, the spiritual benefit, the spiritual knowledge that takes away all kinds of lamentation or illusion or friction or difficulty in relationships is at the heart of what's going on. And so I think we should strive to see these pastimes like that. I mean, and in one sense, we could say that those that don't have that vision, like the brahmachari who was excluded, they're excluded for that reason, because they would misunderstand what's going on. They would misunderstand, and they think of it in ways in which aren't true. And so many people do that, don't they, in relation to Krishna? People have all kinds of things. They think Krishna is immoral because he dances with the gopis. Is that true? Krishna is immoral because he dances? No, it's not true. There's a spiritual truth, a spiritual reality to it that we may mistake. And so any activity of the Lord, we may mistake if we look at it with a materialistic viewpoint. So that's why we're trying to shift from a spiritual focus and understanding of from a material focus and understanding of ourselves to a spiritual focus and understanding. That's what I would say. Yes.
Yeah, I've often struggled to sort of try to understand the movement as a pastime. It seems from when Lord Nityananda kicked, I shouldn't say he's getting the contact with the lotus speaker. I'm just wondering if you had a little bit more insight about, the statement when he says, your son's died, what that sort of means or means.
He's a madman, Nityananda. Avaduta, right? He's an avaduta. So he says things and acts in ways in which are outside the purview of our ordinary material conception or ordinary material society. But is that bad? That's the question I think maybe you're struggling with, and our gentleman in the back is struggling. Is that bad, what he said? No, it's not bad, because, I can just go back to the same example again. Srivas Thakur's son died, and it wasn't bad because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had him explain the science of the soul, which is ultimately good for everyone, no matter what material circumstance there is. And so if we can't see it like that, then we see it with faith and try to understand But I think one way to approach it is this idea that, you know, that they're speaking out of the ecstasy of love, and they're saying things that are apparently extreme, but they are, well, Maharaj can... No, that they look extreme, but they're actually just extreme in the affection that they're expressing to one another. Maharaj.
Along with Shesha Prabhu's more than adequate explanation to Chaitanya Vihar's question, try to add just some sub-points, just a little bit. These personalities in Gaura Lila, they're far beyond birth and death. In fact, Shivananda saying, his wife, and all these persons you're hearing, they are eternal associates of Krishna in the Loka Vrindavan who have appeared in Gaura Lila. So if you try to look at this through the prism of material concepts, the point will be lost completely. So it's actually, it's humorous when Nityananda says, your sons all died. Eternal associates. Nityananda is Balaram. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. Shivananda saying in Vrindavan, Loka Vrindavan is a gopi. So these pastimes are extraordinarily deep. So if you just skim off the surface, it can be bewildering, especially with Nityananda. His name is Avaduta Chandra, the moon of the Avadutas. Avaduta means pays no attention to Vedic rules and Vedic protocols. Zero. Just like the Python man in the 7th canto. But there's a role in the world for those kind of persons who just disregard all rules and regulations of the material plane and just act totally on the spiritual platform. They show you that the material, even the Vedic rules and regulations are not the ultimate. So they have a place. Avadutas have a place. Just like in the Bhagavatam, the Avadutas have a place, even in a strict Vedic society of Varnashram Dharma. Everyone's busy following the Vedas, and the Avadutas just thumb their nose at everything. What about Lord Rishabdev in the 5th canto? Just lying on the road, passing stool. But his stool would make the surrounding areas sweetly fragrant for dozens of miles. So we have to see the whole picture of a genuine human society. And Avadutas from time to time appear just to show you that ultimately the spirituality is most important. So they're doing a service to Krishna. Gaurkishore Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, appeared to be illiterate, and he would chant Hare Krishna sitting next to a latrine. If you've seen latrines in India, you can fully understand the significance of that. He didn't want to be bothered by materialistic people, or he didn't want to be bothered by quasi-spiritual persons coming to him for material blessings. Because they know, he's a great sadhu, we'll go get blessings to get money, to get our daughter married, this, that, the other. He said, therefore, I'll chant Hare Krishna seated right next to a latrine. That way no one will bother me. So that was his particular way of serving Krishna. Yet he initiated the most brilliant scholar, the most erudite genius, even from the material point of view. So you have to see the whole perspective.
Very good. Thank you, Maharaj. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you give some more practical examples of how to be simple?
Two examples of how to be simple. Well, there's one thing, I think I heard Maharaj mention this since we've been here, about how we think we're free, but yeah, but by giving us so many choices, that we think that that's freedom. Well, in one sense, as he pointed out, where that's actually enslaving us, but in another sense, you could look at it and say that, well, okay, we're given choices, and we can exercise our choice by taking the most simple thing. In other words, I need a car. Well, I could get, a Porsche, and that's a car, and it'll take me from here to there. I could get that. Or I could get, a Volkswagen. Maybe they're the same cost these days, I don't know. Actually, those two are the same company. But
Volkswagen cheats.
But we have choice, and we can choose to be simple. We need so many things in life, but we can choose a simple path. We might make a choice between, I have a career opportunity that's going to plop me down in the middle of a big city, but unfortunately there are no devotees there. I have a less materially satisfactory situation where there are devotees. What kind of choice am I going to make? I should choose to be in the association of devotees. We have choice, and we need to try to execute that to be have a more simple life. And there's so many things in Grihastha life where we can apply that same thing to be more simple. Of course, there's another meaning of simple, and it's non-duplicitous. And so we can be simple on our ordinary dealings, and that's how we should particularly be with the saintly persons, which are the other part of the formula for successful dharma and grihastha life. And what does it mean not to be duplicitous with the sadhu? Well, again, yes, Maharaj, yes. But then thinking, no. I'm not going to follow your instructions. And so we should be simple in that regard too. If we can't follow the instruction, we should say, well, I can't follow. Please be merciful to me. Give me instruction I can follow. Not that, oh, yes. I'm going to follow like that. So simplicity is a matter of the heart, and we need to cultivate that. And when we do, we'll find it makes a tremendous difference in our lives. If we don't, then it's guaranteed that we're going to be baffled and thinking, how my life has become so complex all of a sudden that I can't even chant Hare Krishna. So that's
I have a question.
Yes, Maharaj.
Since you mentioned simplicity in reference to Sangeeta Priya's question about Grihastha life and how you have a job offer, it's far away from devotees but pays more money, and here's one, you can help me out, and maybe a little more difficult. This comes up in the brahmacharya ashram when a few of them inevitably decide they want to change ashrams. They're considering choice A, kind of shapely and got a bit of pizzazz. Choice B, a kind of simple but very Krishna conscious. Maybe you can give some expert advice to this
I'm going to follow you on this, Maharaj, because I know from time to time to evoke the right sentiment, you refer back to songs from your youth. So I'm going to refer back to a song from your youth. It's also from my youth that may help understand. And it's simple words to the song. Is that if you want to be happy for the rest of your life.
I did that song. The brahmacharis, that's all. Go on.
If you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. From my personal point of view, get an ugly girl to marry you.
Remember the end of the song? Yeah. It's like, before the rap music, it's kind of, hey man, I saw your wife last night, she's ugly. And the guy says, that's all right, she sure can cook.
Does that answer the question?
The current liberal idea of the justice system is kind of more focused on rehabilitation than punishment. Does that play into Yudhishthira's decision, or is the punishment itself the rehabilitation?
Well, I would think that punishment and rehabilitation are built in. If the death that Duryodhana gave was the decision, that doesn't, at least in this life, allow for any kind of reformation. Being responsible, commiserate to the degree of knowledge you have, sort of says, on the opposite side, to cultivate more knowledge so that you won't make these kind of things again. So there's that sort of rehabilitative there. And certainly the one with the Brahmana, withholding punishment and leaving it to the Brahmana society itself to discipline that person, I think it involves some rehabilitation. So I think that's there. And one thing is that the material justice system, and I think we had conversations about this too, Marge, about how they are now rethinking the whole idea of reformation, and they maybe go just like the story with the terrorist, the eco-terrorist. The example is, they're trying to give an example to others by punishing so difficult, as opposed to trying to rehabilitate somebody. That idea may be thrown out in modern social theory. But in Yudhishthira's judgment, I think it's built in.
I have a few thoughts regarding Dharma and Prabhupada's books. We hear Krishna say that following a person's Dharma, even if you do it perfectly, is dangerous. So I'm thinking how it appears in secondary Dharma, there's even sinful reactions, like we hear the Kshatriyas are allowed to hunt and eat and drink, but that's why they have to do austerities at the end of their life. And Prabhupada also says, like for Vaishyas, they can lie in business just to make a profit and all these things. So is it just in secondary Dharma, even though you're following Dharma, you're going to be afflicted by sinful reactions anyway?
Yeah, that's the problem with Dharma, materialistic Dharma or secondary Dharma. You said, if it's not primary Dharma, means connected with directly worshiping the Supreme Lord, then it's secondary, and at being secondary, it's subject to all kinds of reactions for these things, and so therefore the Dharma generally includes to perform regularly sacrifices, even just to, in your ordinary household duties, you may be grinding spices and you're killing living entities, and therefore sacrifice is recommended. So there's all these things that are just like overwhelming. But you sort of break out of all of that when you take Vaishnava Dharma, and it doesn't become like that. All reactions to your activities become burned up away, as is described in Bhagavad Gita, they become purified. And so one is advised to lead his life in that way, sort of in a transcendent Dharma, as opposed to trying to figure out all the things you have to do in this world to avoid sinful reaction. And many people dedicate their lives to that type of Dharma. And they're busy doing so many sacrifices for this or that, or doing things like calculating the right time for going out the door, so that you won't incur kind of reactions. I think our godbrother, one of our godbrothers who was serving Srila Prabhupada near the end of Prabhupada's stay with us here, and he was getting into that, like, okay, if we have to go do this, but what's the correct astrological time for doing it, and what should we carry with us so that we don't incur a reaction? And Prabhupada said he just discouraged that. You're getting too encumbered by these things. So we don't want to become encumbered by those things. We want to try to act on the level of primary dharma, and we can do that, particularly by this confidential process of yukta vairagya, dovetailing all that we do and that we need in the service of the Lord, and in that way leading a pure life, unencumbered by different types of dharma. I think that's what the way we should lead our life, and that Prabhupada's given us the opportunity to do that. But even within that, there are differences between what a brahmachari would do and has to do and a grihastha has to do. And so, like a brahmachari has to collect money and give to the guru, the grihastha has to earn money and give to the guru. So they may be different. The brahmachari goes begging and to do that, grihastha goes and works to do that, but the objective is the same, therefore both activities are purifying. But if we take a karma yoga approach, or a secondary dharma approach, where we'll work and then give some of the fruits, that's a different thing than the purpose of working is to give the fruit. If the purpose is for me to enjoy and I'm willing to give a little bit, that's secondary. But if my purpose is to work and give as much as I can, that's why I'm working. As a grihastha, that's a different thing. So, in that way, both brahmachari, ashram, grihastha ashram can be on this primary dharma platform. But there's always possibility of sinking down, and the brahmachari drinking milk is an example of that. That's why we read that story. By performing austerity, I'm going to perform austerity, just drink milk, and think that that's going to qualify me spiritually. It's kind of, no, it's just a secondary dharma platform. You can't achieve love of God by that alone. Does that answer? Last one.
Thank you. Yesterday you spoke about 3 types of motivation: knowledge, mission, and love. And I was wondering, what does it mean to be motivated by love in kirtan? Specifically, what kinds of thoughts does it bring out?
What does it mean to be motivated by love in kirtan? Well, I think avoiding things like I'm singing for name and fame. I want to become a famous kirtan singer. I think that's that's number one. It means that for us, someone may not have the most melodious voice, but it's not like, oh, we don't want you to lead kirtan, you can't sing. But if they have the devotion, they're singing with devotion. There's this story of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. At the time he was departing this world, his disciples were in his room chanting softly. And he specifically asked for one particular disciple to sing, but everyone knew that that disciple's voice wasn't very sweet and melodious. But he was instructing, sweet and melodious is not the qualification. So, not seeking honor, prestige, giving respect to others in the kirtan, appreciating their contributions, how they're singing. Of course, this doesn't mean it doesn't, we don't want it to be melodious and inspiring for everyone. But these are subtle differences that we have to sort of orientate ourselves on so that we're not thinking it's a material performance. Once we start thinking it's a material performance, then I'm showing off my skill as a mridanga player or whatever, then we're slipping into kind of a bad motivation that we need to avoid. So kirtan or anything we can see like that same points, just be careful, respectful of others, not proud, not wanting fame, not wanting money. Because sometimes people want money also. So, not wanting money. Okay. Is that all right? I think it's past 9:30. We should stop. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.